TipTut.
Hello everybody and welcome back to TipTut and welcome back to Motion Graphics Icons. Today we're taking a look at animating this aeroplane. If you haven't already, before I get started, I will recommend that you go and watch the camera episode first, because in that one I explain everything that it is I'm doing in greater detail from the ground up. In the rest of this series, photograph, boat, surfboard, cocktail, plane, and the next one, which is sunglasses, I take things a little bit quicker because I'm under the assumption that you're following along the series with me. If you're not, if you stumble across this by accident, go watch the camera one and then come back. It shouldn't take too long, don't worry. Apart from that, I'm just going to jump right in. Let's take a look at what we've done so far. Last time we animated the cocktail. So we've now got the camera, the photograph coming in. We've got the boat, which is still my favorite, the surfboard, we have the briefcase, and now we have the cocktail as well, which is lovely jubbly. Right, up next then is the airplane. So first thing you're going to need to do is drop your JPEG, which you can get from the website. The description link is in the description below. And come in and just draw a square over our airplane using the rectangle tool, which will create a nice mask for us so that we can isolate the airplane from the rest of the image. Perfecto. I'm going to realign the anchor point to the center. I'm using Motion V2, but you can just use the pan behind tool. And then I'm going to type in 960 by 540 on position, which is the center of the composition. There we go, which is good. We're ready to go. Now, the first step in animating these icons is to trace over them using shape tools. The reason we do this is because in doing so, you understand more how the shape is constructed and therefore how to animate it. You could just, if you made these in Illustrator, you could just move them in straight from Illustrator, take those, convert those into shape layers. But I find in redrawing it again, you are understanding how that shape is constructed, and therefore when you animate it, it's more based in actual physics and realism, which even for something as simple as this is quite important. To help make this drawing a little bit easier, I'm going to rotate this by 45 degrees so that it's straight upwards so we can make some easier shapes, and we're going to dive right in. It's just basically a combination of the pen tool, the rectangle tool, you know, the ellipse tool, things like that, just to trace the image that we already have. So I'm going to make sure I eyedropper the color of the line, make sure the thickness is right. That's going to be 4 pixels in width. And we're just going to go through and start tracing this airplane. Okay. Now, it's a bit chunky. Bit chunky. 4 pixels. Now, it's important to note, of course, there are some parts of this design which are not visible. Oops, excuse me. I didn't do that very well. Let's try that again. There are some parts of the design, like under the wings and stuff, where you have to consider whether this is 1 or 2 shapes. It's kind of up to you, but in this particular example, it works well as 2 shapes. And that's why we're redrawing it, because if you just took it in from Illustrator, chances are it would be one path that you've merged together or something like that, which wouldn't work well for animating it. Whereas if you redraw it in After Effects, you can redraw it with the knowledge that it is going to be animated, and therefore you can make it a bit easier on yourself. For example, I'm going to be extending these wings further than they appear because I know that I'm going to be animating them swinging outwards, as you saw in the introduction. Meaning they might need a little bit of extra space, because in the introduction one, I noticed that the wings separate themselves from the plane when they swing out too far, and I don't want that to happen on this one. So instead, what I'm doing is extending them further into the plane so that when they do swing out, they don't do that. Nice and simple. So that is wing left. That is the body of the plane. We can duplicate this one for wing right by Control D and then transform flip horizontal and then repositioning it, which is lovely jubbly. And we can do the same thing for the tail, which is the last section of it, like this. Extend it a little bit further than it might need to go. Bring it around here. Do the same thing. And do the same thing. Perfecto. Let's call this one tail L and cocktail are. This one, of course, we will transform, flip horizontally, and then shift into position. Okay, so that's all the line work that we need. The only other bits now are the colored elements, which is fine. Let's take the body and duplicate that, shift it all the way down to the bottom, and we're just going to undo the stroke, and we're going to just add a white fill in. Then we're just going to hide this layer for now. The next step is to take your rectangle tool, and we're going to get this green section here. Okay, and we're just going to quickly, with no layer selected, we're just going to quickly draw over this rectangle. Don't worry about going over the plane, that doesn't matter. If you select that layer and just shift it out of the way, you can then eyedropper the light green and then shift it back again, nice and cheeky. And then to cut these edges off, what we're going to do is duplicate this hidden body layer. So we've got our original body line, we've got our hidden body 2, which is the white version, and then we've got our body green, which is this strip going down the middle, okay? What you need to do is duplicate the white layer, drag it above the body green, and then set the track matte of the body green to be alpha matte body 3. And what that does is it means anywhere where this layer, this hidden mask layer is, show the shape. Anywhere that it's not, hide the shape. Really simple. Grab your body green and pick whip it to the hidden body layer. And that means that if we do accidentally move this body layer around, we've now got, you know, the shape moving with it. It's as simple as that. You can then show your white layer underneath. Okay. The other two shapes then that's left to do are just these wing segments here. The easiest way is just to grab your pen tool like so and literally just draw them out. Nice and simple. You can see here that if I were to let go and then click to close the path, I'm going to have a curve that I don't want. What I can do to rectify that is holding Alt, I can adjust just the single parameter of this handle. So we get a sharp corner there, which is a really useful tip to know. You can then take, oops, I just drew that on the wrong layer, I think. Yes, I did. I did it on the separate layer. What I need to do is make sure I've got no layer selected and then do it. So let's try that again. Like so, holding Alt so it's a straight line, and then closing it off like that. Perfecto. Let's take this layer, shift out of the way for a sec, and grab our darker fill. And then pop it back into position. We'll call this one wing tip left, and we'll duplicate it and call wing tip right, and we'll transform that, flip it horizontally, and reposition it where it needs to be. That looks a bit too short now compared to that other shape. That's okay there. Doesn't have to be exact. All right, perfect. Next thing to do is to delete our plane and see if we've missed anything out, which we haven't. So I'm just going to shift these along a frame so that we don't have any of the cocktail from the last episode left over. And then I'm going to sort the layers out so you can't see any of this nonsense in the middle. First thing to do is to take these wingtips and put them right down to the bottom, okay? Then you just need to take your tail, put that underneath the body, and take your two wings and put that underneath the body. And there you go. We've now got our plane sorted and ready to go, ready to be animated. So let's take a look at it then. The first thing that we want is the body of the plane to grow from top to bottom. So we'll do that first. What we're going to do, we're not going to animate the scale because that's going to sort of change the thickness of the lines and stuff. What we will do is animate the path. Because it's got a weird shape at the end, we kind of have to do it a little bit manually, but that's fine. It doesn't take too long. 12 down until you get to path and then put it on a keyframe. And then move along about 15 frames. This is something we've talked about in previous episodes. We work in increments of either 15 or 10, and then that way all the animations, even if they take longer or shorter, they've got the same rhythm to them, essentially. Control, Shift, and Right will move you along 10 frames. Control and Right will move you along 1, so 2, 3, 4, 5. Keyframe there. Shift Right again will move you along another 10, and keyframe there. Okay. Now, this is because this is going to be fully shut. This is going to be an overshoot frame, and this is where it's going to end up settling. Okay, and that'll make sense in a second. What I'm going to do is go back to my first frame here, and I'm going to manipulate these individual points until they reduce basically down to nothing. Okay, so I need to select an individual point, which I can do with the selection tool, dragging over one, and then shift clicking the rest. I can move these all down. Okay, and that maintains that curve for now, which you might want to keep. And we'll do the same thing at the bottom. But firstly, we're just going to bring these all the way through like that until they pretty much match up. And then we're going to click this one by itself and bring that all the way down. And this one by itself and all the way down. But then you can see we've got these little extra curve bits where we haven't quite matched them up properly. So what we're going to do is just bring all of these individual handles until they're roughly on top of each other. Just so they all match up and we get what is pretty much a straight line, okay? From there, that will grow into this one and then settle back into here. So this one, we just need to take those further 3 points, okay, on this layer. So we'll select here, go to the pen tool. And with the pen tool then selected, you can select the individual points of the line, okay? So we can choose this one. Oops, try that again. Like so, we can have this one, and this one. What we can do is overshoot that by pulling it out. And we can overshoot this 3 here by shift clicking all of them and pulling them out. And then, excuse me, it will settle back into its final keyframe there, its final positioning, okay? Right, let's watch that. There you go, looks all right, apart from the animation timing is rubbish. So what we're gonna do is ease those in so it looks a little bit better. You can hit F9 with your keyframe selected to do that, or you can go to right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. And from there, you're gonna want to go to your speed graph, which is this little icon up here. Select your keyframes and then just use the little yellow handles to drag those over, okay? From here, you want to drag the first set of handles over to the left, but the second handle over to the right. And what that does, that makes the initial one go from fast to slow, okay? And then slow to fast to settling in. And that gives you a nice little bounce. Okay, nice little bounce when it comes out like that, which is cool, looks all right. From here, you want to copy these path keyframes, okay? And then paste them down onto your white body. So we'll just call this body white. Paste in there. What that means is it does the same thing for that white undertone as well, okay? If you want to make sure it's on the right bit, you can just go down to shape path and paste it there. So it's actually gone down onto the group path shape, which is incorrect. You want it down onto the shape path. So make sure that's selected and then hit paste. And then that will actually animate the shape going out as well, which is good. You can leave the rest of those alone because we don't want this green stripe to start animating in until that's stopped. So what we can do is go to the last keyframe of that path, take our body green, make sure that line is in the center, hit scale, maybe give it 30 frames, sorry. Add a second keyframe after 30 frames, go back to the first one, unlink the width and height scale and turn the width down to 0. Then if you do the same thing with F9 graph editor. Now this, if you see this graph, for example, it just means you're on the wrong graph editor screen. This is the value graph. What you need to be is on the speed graph. You should see something like this. From then you can then select the keyframes, bring those over and adjust the speed and influence so that it grows and then slows down, which is quite nice. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, that looks okay. All right, let's start working on the wings, which is the fun bit. Just as this starts to make its final growth, even before it shrinks back, that's when we want to start editing things like the tail and things like that. So let's take both of these layers here and using the Motion V2 plugin, I'm going to realign their anchor points, okay? To be sort of in the top right. However, you can do it with the pan behind tool, like I said before. And for these ones, I'm just going to need scale and rotation. So that's S, Shift, R to bring up the scale and rotations, and then keyframe all of them. Let's give it 15 frames. So Control, Shift, right, and then Control, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That gives us our overshoot keyframe. Control, Shift, right gives us our finishing keyframe. Now what we need to do is go back and adjust the overshooting and the initial keyframe. So we can go to rotation, and adjust these individually so that they overshoot outwards and overshoot outwards all the way up to 35. And then in this one, we want them to be scaled down to say maybe 80, just so they look a little bit smaller. And then we can rotate that until it's hidden, like so. And we'll do the same thing here. This one's going to be 46 on the rotation. And then scale down to 80, so it's hidden. So then when these pop out, yeah, looks pretty good, huh? Nice. Let's grab all those keyframes, give them a bit of easy easing, go into our speed value and do the same thing that we've done previously, okay? Grab all those keyframes, drag them left, grab all these keyframes, drag them right. Fast to slow, and then bouncing back into position. Looks pretty cool. Let's have a look. Here's an issue. They're still there before the plane is grown. So what we need to do is just trim those two layers, tail left and tail right. If you go to your first keyframe and then select Alt, open square bracket, that trims the layer to where that point is in time, which means they won't be there when this is growing. Nice. Pretty happy with that. It looks quite good. Let's have, as it's shrinking then, let's have the rest of the wings do the same thing as the tail, pretty much. The easiest way to do this is to collapse down everything you don't need. Take your wing tip right and left and your wing right and left, which I'm just going to put next to each other for the sake of simplicity. And adjust all their anchor points to be to the tips of the wings, okay? And then take your wing tip right and pick whip it to your wing tip, to your wing right, sorry. Which is this one. Nope, which is this one, which I didn't rename. So wing right. Then take your wing tip left and connect it to your wing left. And that means whatever we do to the wings, like rotating, for example, they're going to come with it. Okay, perfect. We're going to do pretty much the same thing that we just did with the tail, but on the wings now. So we're going to need a scale and a rotation on both. We're going to keyframe them and move 15 frames. Control Shift right, Control right, 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 right. Do the same thing. Control Shift right, do the same thing. Now we know that that's settled. We're happy with that. So we're going to go back to the overshoot keyframe and we're going to shift these all the way out. But first I'm going to actually hide them so I see what values I need to actually hide them. Let's push it around to say 50 for a nice round number and push the scale down to 80. That's not actually going to hide it. So let's put the rotation around until that's hidden and then the scale all the way down until we get something we're kind of happy with. Nearly hidden. Nearly. There we go. So it's 53 and 38. That's going to swing out and come back, which means this one's going to have to be 53 and its rotation is going to have to be negative 38. So they're both wings are hidden underneath the plane there. That means when the overshoot comes along, we can overshoot it like this, which is why we did the extra bit of wing there. It means we can overshoot this one by negative 23. But we can scale up also by just a little bit. Don't want to overdo it, maybe 5%. So the wings then swing out and settle back in like that. Let's add some easing. F9, go to our graph editor, select our middle keyframe and drag it all the way to the left and drag it all the way to the right. If you're having trouble, you can always zoom in like I am, having trouble. And then there you go, sorted. And let's see what that looks like then. I'm going to go back to the first time these are here and cut both of those layers with Alt, open square bracket. See what it looks like. Yeah, not bad. Apart from the wingtips are still there because I didn't cut those off because I'm a big dummy. Okay, let's cut both of those and have a look. Not too bad. Quite happy with that. Let's take a look at what other effects we added to this one then as it was coming in. So we added some like little wind effects as that one was coming in, and obviously it needs to be rotated back another 45 degrees. But that's simple enough to do. We can do that no problem at all. So let's go back to our travel icons and add in some wind just as it's starting. Okay. So let's go to where we've got our full plane nice and finished. And we're just going to, with no layers selected, we're going to take our fill and make it disappear. Going to take our stroke and make it, let's make it the light green rather than the black. That should look okay. And from here, we're just going to draw some wavy lines in the air as if it was wind. Okay, so that's going to go like this. And then come out here like this. And then sort of curve back around. Rather than duplicating it, let's draw a new one. Similar, but should hopefully give it a bit of individuality, which is always good in life as in motion graphics. There we go, that looks pretty cool. Let's cut both of these and give them a nice trim path. Go down to your first shape layer. Take the add button and add a trim path to it. Twirl down trim path and give it a keyframe on start and end. Then if you hit Control Shift right 3 times to give you 30 frames of space, add another couple of keyframes in there. Make sure the second set of keyframes both read 100 and the first set of keyframes both read 0. Okay, hit F9 on those, get your graph editor out, make the influence 100% so it's nice and fast, and then shift those 2 end keyframes over by about 3 frames. And to do that, it's just Alt and then right. 1, 2, 3. What that does is creates a lovely little line moving across there, like so. We're going to copy these keyframes and paste them on our second layer. And then moving 3 frames along with Control and right, and open square bracket, we're going to push that second layer along so that the 2 bits of wind appear slightly after each other. One thing I will say is you're going to want to take both of these and give them a round end so that they look a bit nicer. Again, if you don't have Butt Kappa, which is a brilliant plugin, you can go down to the shape, stroke of your layer and change the line cap and line join to round if you want to. Simple as that. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's say that's ready to pre-compose. I'm just going to shift these 2 bits of wind over to when it first starts. Maybe about here. Maybe a bit later. Yeah, that looks good. All right, okie dokie. Happy with that. Let's take all of our layers from our plane. Right click, pre-compose. Move all attributes to the new composition. Make sure that's selected. Type in Aeroplane. Perfecto. We've now got our composition. From here, we can rotate this composition back to its 45-degree angle, so it looks a bit cooler. You can see how much easier that was to work on since we rotated it straight. It's as simple as that. It's so good. Now all we need to do is add the little bit of wiggling that we get from our null objects like we've had in the previous episodes. Nice and easy to do. All you need to do is hit Control-Shift-Alt-Y, or go up to Layer, New, Null Object, and we're going to basically use this null object to twist our plane around a little bit. To do that, we're going to need scale and rotation. So S, Shift, R. Keyframe both of those and move along 30 frames with Control, Shift, and right. Okay. Then add in another couple of keyframes. Go back to the first set and make the rotation -45, which is straightening the plane out a little bit. And then make the scale 90 degrees. 90%, sorry, not degrees. Easy ease those with F9. Go to your speed editor and make them fast to slow. And then once that animation is finished, okay, pick whip your aeroplane to your null object. And then that adds in a little bit of extra spin there. Okay, looks pretty good. Another step that I've done is use my Ease and Whiz plugin to elastic out, which basically just adds a little bit of bounce to that first spring in there. You can see it kind of wobbles around a bit more. And that's it. Pretty much done. I like that. It looks all right. I like the fact the winds don't separate like in the original one. I'd say that's an improvement. We've done well. So that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Like I said, if you had any trouble following along, or you just want to explore a bit more, make sure you watch the camera episode of this series. That's the one where I explain everything really slowly. If you do have any questions and things like that, let me know in the Discord or in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time for the final episode where we'll be animating some sunglasses. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you all next time.
Remember to subscribe for more tips, tricks, and tutorials. Thanks for watching.